Today, Greta has announced a donation of 100,000 euros from the Greta Thunberg Foundation to the WHO Foundation in support of COVAX to provide vaccines to people in need. Greta, thank you. Tack så mycket for your superb advocacy for climate action and now for vaccine equity. Your contribution makes the first and the youngest person to contribute to COVAX. Welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to participate in this event, and I will talk briefly now. And science shows that in the future we will most likely experience more frequent and more devastating pandemics unless we drastically change our ways and the way we treat nature. Today, up to 75% of all emerging diseases come from animals. And as we are cutting down forests and destroying habitats, we are creating the ideal conditions for diseases to spill over from one animal to another and then to us. And we can no longer separate the health crisis from the ecological crisis, and we cannot separate the ecological crisis from the climate crisis. It's all interlinked in many ways. And during this pandemic, we have seen what we can achieve when we put resources into science. Vaccines were developed in record time. But so far, on average, 1 in 4 people in high-income countries have received a coronavirus vaccine, compared with just 1 in over 500 in low and middle-income countries. And the international community, governments and vaccine developers must step up their game and address the tragedy that is vaccine inequity. We have the tools we need to correct this great imbalance that exists around the world today in the fight against COVID-19. Just with the climate crisis, those who are the most vulnerable need to be prioritized, and global problems require global solutions. It is completely unethical that high-income countries are now vaccinating young and healthy people if that happens at the expense of people in risk groups and on the front lines in low and middle-income countries. And this is a moral test. We talk today about showing solidarity, and yet vaccine nationalism, it's what's running the vaccine distribution. It is only when it really comes down to it that we show our true face. And that is why I and many others are supporting WHO, Gavi, and all involved in the COVAX initiative, which I believe offers the best path forward to ensure a more equitable global vaccine distribution and a way out of this pandemic. We must not forget that this is not a problem that is caused by individuals. This is a problem that needs to be addressed by the international community, governments, and the vaccine developers. It is wrong if we should start focusing on individuals and urging individuals to not take the vaccine. That would send the very wrong message. Of course, everyone who is offered a vaccine should take it. But we need to see the bigger picture here and be able to focus on several things at once. So no, I would not advocate for people to not take the vaccine. Yes, of course, it's absolutely crucial that everyone takes our personal responsibility in this crisis. We young people may be the ones who are least affected by, in general, least affected by the virus in a direct way. But of course, that, like I said, we need to act in solidarity with the people in risk groups, and of course, many young people fail to draw that connection, maybe. Of course, not everyone, but of course, there will always be some. And my message to those is that we need, during crises like these, we need to take a few steps back and act for the greater good of society, and in order to protect our fellow citizens and then of course, especially people in risk groups, because that is the thing you do during crises. You step up for one another. And my hopes for the Biden summit is I hope that we will start soon, in one way or another, start treating this crisis like a crisis, the climate crisis that is, because if we are to be blunt, I mean, we can have as many summits as we want, we can have as many meetings and conferences as we want, and talk, make nice speeches and nice pledges like net zero 2050 and so on. But as long as those things contain so many loopholes as they do, and as long as we are not actually treating the crisis like a crisis, of course we won't be able to achieve any major changes. Like I mentioned earlier, this is something that we need to change our mindsets, and we need to change our view of the world. We cannot move into this, try to solve this crisis with the same approach that got us into it in the first place. So we need to start treating the crisis like a crisis. Without increased level of awareness among people in general, of course, there will be no pressure on world leaders to actually start making the changes that are necessary to safeguard humanity. So my hope is that we will start treating the crisis like a crisis.